Hello everyone, today I'm going to show you how to factorize a trinomial, and I'm going to show you 4 different ways to do that in order to solve a quadratic equation. The first way I'm going to show you is a quadratic formula, which is a special formula that you need to remember, or if you're doing an exam, sometimes it's in the formula sheet at the back. So the quadratic formula is based on your A, B, and C in the equation. Now your A is the number in front of your x squared, your B is the number in front of the x, and your C is the number by itself. So for this one, we see that A is equal to 1, B is equal to -4, and C is equal to 3. Okay, so the quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now all we need to do is to substitute in our a, b, and c. So our a is 1. So let's put our 1 in where we see an A. So those are there, and our B is -4. And our C is 3. Now all we need to do is solve this equation. So we can either put it into our calculator or we can solve it manually, because -4 squared is 16 minus, and then 4 times 3 is 12. So in here would be a 4, and then it would be -4 plus or minus 4 all over 2 times 1. So that simplifies to 4 plus or minus the square root of 4, which is 2. So 4 minus 2 is going to be 2 over 2, which is 1. So one of our answers is x equals 1. And if we add the 2, we get 6 over 2, which is 3. Now our brackets are going to be the opposite of those numbers. So our brackets are going to be x minus 1 and x minus 3. So that's going to be our factors. So our factors of x squared minus 4x plus 3 are x minus 1 and x minus 3. If you're not sure why these are negative, I will show you when we factorize by inspection, and you'll see that then the answers change to from a positive to a negative, or it would change from a negative to positive. So let's do factorization by inspection. So the first thing we do is we write out our equation that we need to factorize. And then we open our brackets. These are going to be our 2 factors. And what we do is we take the factors of x, so that we take the number in front. So what are the factors, possible factors of x? They're going to be x and x. Then we take the factors of 3. Well, there's only 3 possible factors, which would be 3 and 1. And then we say, what do I need the middle to be? I need the middle to be 4x. So I cross multiply. So x times x is 3x, and x times 1 is x. This is a minus 4x. I need it to be a minus 4x. So these 2 numbers added together are what gives us the middle number. So this is an easy one because it's minus 3x and minus x. I'll do some harder examples so that you can get the hang of how we do this cross multiplication. And then these become our brackets. It's times -3 and times -1 will give us our, so this is x times -3 will be -3x, and x times -1 will be -x. So we have, these are our brackets here, x -3 and x -1. And if we were to solve this equation, we would say, right, if you have a times b, so let's do that in a different color. Let's say I have a times b times another number b, and you're told that that's equal to 0. If a was 1,000,000 and b was 0, 1,000,000 times 0 would still be 0. So whatever a is, if b is 0, the answer is 0. And the same thing for a. So if b is 1,000,000 and a is 0, then it's still going, the answer is going to be 0. So it means that either of these can be 0. So it means that x -3 can equal 0 and x -1 equals 0. And the reason that why we have the opposite signs is because when it goes across, it becomes x equals 3. And that's a -1, and x equals 1. Because when 1 jumps across this, the equal sign, it changes from negative to positive. Okay, now let's do the third way, which is completing the square. Now, when we are completing the square, what we're interested in, the theory behind it, is this bit here, this x squared minus 4x. So x squared minus 4x. Now let's imagine that this was a perfect square. For this to be a perfect square, what I do is I would have to say x minus, and then the square root of this. Or should I say half of the -4. So if I was to times this out, I would get x minus 2 times x minus 2 and I get that. Because when you have these brackets next to each other, so let's say that the x minus 2 is just this, okay, that's what x minus 2 squared means. I get x times x is x squared, and then when I times x times minus 2, I get minus 2x, and in the middle, another minus 2x, which is minus 4x, and then when I times minus 2 and minus 2, I get plus 4. So when we compare that to this underlined, we see that we have a plus 4. So if I want to change this to a perfect square, in other words, if I want to change it to x minus 2 squared, I'm going to have to, because I would get x squared minus 4x plus 4, I would have to take off a 4 for this x squared minus 4x to not be a different answer. So what I'm saying is this here is what we put in, but it's not 4x squared minus 4x plus 4. It's 4x minus 4x. So I have to actually take off the 4. And then the plus 3 equals 0. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the 4x squared minus 4x and I'm turning it into a perfect square, but not changing the answer. And so this bit here becomes my perfect square, which is what they mean by completing the square. So this then is x minus 2 squared. And then minus 4 plus 3 is, I'm going to put this in white. So that is minus 1 equals 0. Now what I can do is I take the 1 across, so it becomes plus 1. And so then I have x minus 2 squared equals 1. Now what I can do is I can square root both sides. So I square root both sides and I get x minus 2 equals plus or minus 1. Because when I square root a number, I get plus or minus. And that comes from, if you have negative 1 times negative 1, it's still 1. And 1 times 1 is 1. So when you square root this, this could be a plus or a minus 1. So let me put that in red, just so that we can see why we're doing that, why that is the case. And and now the last bit is to take the 2 over, and it becomes x equals 2 plus or minus 1. And so I get x equals 2 minus 1 is 1, or x equals 3. And we see we get the same answer as we got before. And so our brackets, if we were to do them, would be x minus 1 and x minus 3. Okay, and now the last way is just to do by the calculator, which we have a silver calculator here. Now, not all schools and universities accept this calculator. I know that in South Africa, the matric exams, they do accept the silver calculator. And in the GCSEs and the guys who wrote their SATs, they did, in the calculator section, allow this calculator. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so let's go and do that. So when we want to calculate a trinomial using our Casio calculator, we go into mode and we look at we want the equation mode, number 5. Okay. And here it's got a series of equations. We want the third equation because that's got the x squared. So we're going to say 3. And we know now our a is 1. Our b is minus 4. And our c is 3 equals. And now it's going to show you the first value of x is 3, which we got, and 1. And it also shows you the minimum and the y minimum as well. But what we were looking for was the x and the x1 and the x2. So you don't want to just put the x equals 1 and x equals 2, especially if they're giving method marks, because they don't want you to just use the calculator. So what you're going to do is you're going to write out your quadratic formula, and then you're going to substitute in the formula. So you're going to do those first 2 steps. The only thing it just saves you a bit of time, and also makes sure that you're accurate. So once you've written in your quadratic formula, so in the quadratic formula method I showed in blue, then you write down your answers. Or if you want to do it that you worked it by inspection, you need to take the 1 and you need to make it x minus 1 as a bracket. And the 3, you make it x minus 3 as a bracket. So whatever your answers are, you change the signs and you put them in as a bracket. So you get the method marks for factorizing. And then only would you write in your answers. So hopefully that helped you. Those are the different ways you can use to factorize. If you see factorize to the nearest 2 decimal places, Don't bother using by inspection because it means that you're going to use the quadratic formula. So hopefully that helped you. If you want to see more videos on how to do maths problems, please like and subscribe to the channel, and I will keep sending you as many helpful videos as I can. Have a great day.